As I had indicated, I converted almost 30 years ago. I actually, my anniversary of my Shahada was on Saturday, July 1st, January 1st. So New Year's Day is actually my anniversary for my Shahada. So it's a special day, but for a different reason. As far as when I began seriously seeking knowledge, because I think as converts, generally speaking, pretty much every convert to a certain degree hits the ground seeking knowledge. It's kind of a definition of the job description, if you will. Being a convert kind of requires that you have to enter into OJT as quickly as possible, on the job training. So leaving aside the obvious informal education that we all go through from the minute we become Muslim, formal education is, and by that I'm referring to being in some sort of an organized program of education, would have been 95, I believe it was. So 2 to 3 years after I'd become Muslim. That was at the beginning of the institution of some Islamic universities in the West.
So you were in your early 20s.
I was in my early 20s when I converted, and so I was mid to late 20s when I started my education, and all of my education has been with Western universities. Now, when I say that, they're Western, but they're Islamic universities. They're not. It's not like we're talking Purdue or Yale or Harvard or somewhere like that, like some of the scholars nowadays have. We'll leave aside my personal feelings on that. But it was always with Islamic universities. So they were Muslim established and run institutions, which had its pluses and minuses, as I'm sure even Ruba can speak to.
I understand.
But so I started the education there, and I was doing it part-time because life was already in flow. And so I had to work, I had to take care of a family, I had to do all of these different things. Then I was, from the very beginning, about the exact same time I started formally learning, I was also teaching. I started teaching almost the exact same time I started learning formally. And that's something that, and I'm going to assume Sister Ruba has probably heard something similar, that the shuyukh that you study with many times will tell you that you need to pay the zakat on the knowledge, on the ilm that you gain, and the zakat on knowledge is to teach. And so I went through periods where I wouldn't teach for a while, and then I would go back because I would feel guilty, because my teachers had drilled that mantra into my head about paying the zakat on the knowledge. And to sit too long idle and not teaching, you begin to feel guilty, and you feel like, okay, I need to start doing something again, even if it's small, so that I'm putting this to use. I'm using it, attempting to use it for something to benefit someone. And it when you're really dedicated to that idea, you don't care about the size of the group. I'll tell this story and then I'll let Sister Ruba answer your question. I had somebody years ago gave me a piece of advice about teaching, that even if the room is empty, if no one shows up, and I know Ruba's had this experience for her Sunday classes occasionally. I've definitely had the experience on various occasions when people don't show up. I really freaked somebody out at one of the Islamic centers I used to teach at, because I had this ongoing class that was small in numbers that would show up, and it was dwindling. And I had a few times before I ended the class that no one showed up. I remember them saying, go ahead and give the class to the empty room. The angels will testify on your behalf. And so I'm in the basement of this Islamic center, and I'm sitting against a pillar, talking to an empty room, giving my lesson. Somebody comes downstairs, I'm assuming to pray. They open the door, and you can practically hear them stop dead in their tracks. They stand there for a minute and then they go away. I'm like, I scared them to death, I'm sure. Right. Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and see, and that's one of the really important things when you begin any journey of learning. religious knowledge in particular. Religious knowledge is not an academic exercise, or at least it's not meant to be an academic exercise. Religious knowledge is meant to be something that is imbibed and is absorbed and is then transformative in your life. It should be seen in your life and in the way you lead your life, as well as it should be reflected in the way you carry yourself, whether it's through just your personality and your manners, or through more formal things like what we're doing now with teaching and talking to people directly about it. But it should be reflected. It's meant to be used. It's like fuel. And if you don't burn the fuel, it's going to go to waste and it's going to lose its effectiveness. Exactly. Yeah, this is reference to a line in one of the hadith that talk about how the Quran can be hujja laka aw alayk. It can become an argument for you or against you on the day of judgment.